two songs, one a cappella and one with guitar for peace. If I stood out in the rain in the night, my only light a candle a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. Men of anger, men of war, my heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. This death I see won't make me numb. My heart is filled with love. Every boy a mother's son. My heart is filled with love. Raise your voices, spread the news. My heart is filled with love. Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Jews. My heart is filled with love. They all teach the golden rule. My heart is filled with love. Do unto others as you'd have them do. My heart is filled with love. I will not fear these foreign tongues. My heart is filled with love. There is a place for everyone. My heart is filled with love. I cannot make their will my own. My heart is filled with love. Fear can turn a heart to stone. My heart is filled with love. I do not know my neighbor's name. My heart is filled with love. I love that stranger just the same. My heart is filled with love. Hope is rising from this place. My heart is filled with love. Divine wisdom, amazing grace. My heart is filled with love. Men of anger, men of war, my heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. My heart is filled with love. My heart is filled with love. See if I can burn my armpit while I'm trying to put my guitar away. There we go. I'm wearing something that in a synagogue they might call a tallis. It has the Palestinian colors. It's a tallis for a rabbi. If you're a Unitarian Universalist or many other Christian clergy, it's a stole. Me, with no religious qualifications whatsoever, it's a scarf. That's what I'll call it for the purposes of today. That's funny. I think no qualifications whatsoever. And I think of, have you ever seen, there's this whole list of underhanded compliments that you can give in like a recommendation for somebody. I recommend Jose Alemán with no qualifications whatsoever. or I am proud to say that Karin Klein is a former colleague of mine. Anyway, community church, where irreverence abounds and where I'm on this perpetual, I haven't actually formally presented it to the board, perpetual campaign to make our high holiday be April Fools. But here on this day we celebrate Thanksgiving and we celebrate National Day of Mourning. Or we observe, let's say, National Day of Mourning. I wasn't there in Plymouth this year, but that's a magnificent routine to gather every year and remember that it's not like they told you it was. And there's so many things where you have to remember that it's not like they told you in school. I've got just a couple of announcements. The first thing is that we have a really special event next Sunday. And it's not at 11, it's at 1. Why? Because it's it's opportunity for a bunch of people who go to different congregations to come here to celebrate an institution that is a celebration of all faiths all together. It's called the Peace Abbey. It used to be a physical place that was a retreat center and a sort of a bed and breakfast for celebration of the unity of all faiths and for pacifism and animal liberation. We are giving them our 2023 Sacco and Vanzetti Award. And that's the Peace Abbey, and it's movers and shakers, Lewis and Meg Randa, and the two chaplains of the Peace Abbey are Dot Walsh and Dan Dick, and all four of them will be celebrated next week at 1 p.m. Followed by a sumptuous plant-based meal that the people who are receiving the award insist on preparing for us. That's not how it usually is, right? Anyway, Peace Abbey is not your usual place. It's a very special spot that I just can't say enough about some of their, let's call them quixotic, which is like sort of, oh, look who walked in. What a special treat. Both of you. This is just amazing. Welcome. Wow. I'd like to point out one of Lewis and Meg Randa's best and most recent initiatives is a pledge for people who own a house, own any kind of a property. When that property changes hands, a certain percentage, small percentage, needs to go to the tribe that walked that place originally, the native people to that place who were displaced by European capitalism and the purchase of land. I like that idea so much that it's going to be in our will, and I take that this occasion to remember that this land upon which we are once belonged to the fishes who swam under us, because it was land taken from the sea, and before that, along its edges, along its banks, the Massachusetts and the Nipmuc fished. There are still fish weirs that are sometimes found in archaeological digs, like around the Boston Common. So this is a place that was inhabited for thousands of years before European people arrived here. So we observe that especially on this day. Couple of announcements. Maybe I'll ask Amar to to make the announcements about two of the upcoming emergency events that we've scheduled. Some have already gone by, but in light of the present crisis in Palestine, Israel, we've had several things, including two coming up. Amar?
Great. Thank you, Dean. Yeah, so, sorry, I'm just adjusting the mic here. So we have an event on December 14th. We'll have Max Blumenthal visiting us here from Washington, D.C. He'll be live at the church, the second floor auditorium here. So come join us if you can, or that'll also be on Zoom. So it'll be in person and virtual. That's on December 14th, which I think is a Thursday at 7 p.m. On December 5th, we're having a Palestinian professor named Sami Al-Arian join us, and he's joining us from the Middle East. He's from a family of Palestinian refugees. They became refugees in 1948 and had to move to Gaza, his parents, and he ended up in the United States at some point, became a university professor, and became a political prisoner in the US after the September 11th attacks. And he was awarded actually a community church's Sacco Vanzetti Award of last year, 2022. So a few days ago on November 22nd, we held an event, this group I'm affiliated with, the JFK Peace Group. November 22nd was the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President John Kennedy. So we held an event, and our speaker for that event was Ray McGovern, who was a 27-year veteran of the CIA. He gave President's Daily Brief and whatnot, and he also is a peace activist. He worked with the Quakers and other groups. So I'm just gonna, and he's also friends with Sami Al-Arian, who's our speaker on December 5th at 12 p.m. noon, because he's joining us on Zoom from the Middle East. So I'm gonna play a quick clip from a few days ago of Ray McGovern speaking about his friend, Sami Al-Arian. Yeah, I'm gonna put it on that screen up there. Okay, can you guys see it? All right. Okay, here we go.
Well, I want to keep it clean, Amar, so I'm not going to address Biden. Sami Al-Arian is the epitome of what I think is a representative devotee of Islam. He's gentle, he's kind, he's smart as can be, and he was persecuted by U.S. justice officials mercilessly, put in all kinds of jails. I first met him at a jail in Southern Virginia, of all places, and he was all smiles. Oh, thanks for coming, and blah, 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 blah. And then when he was under house arrest for a couple of years in Arlington, Virginia, he was real close. So I used to see him regularly. He's a model. He's heading up a university subsection in Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken. He had me talk to his folks about a year ago. Don't miss it. Was it the 5th, I guess you said? I'll try to tune in as well at noon. Again, he's just a real mensch, if I could say that. And he's really worth listening to.
So that's Ray McGovern, and he's talking about Sami Al-Arian, who will be our speaker here on December 5th at 12 p.m. noon. So I'll share the link to join us in the Zoom chat right now. And yeah, please join us if you can. He's going to be talking about the situation in Gaza and Israel, Palestine, and the United States. He's actually a brilliant geopolitical analyst, and his parents were refugees in Gaza. So yes, thank you, Dean. Back to you.
Yes, Amar Ahmad is our Zoom master and indispensable member of our crew. And while we're speaking of political prisoners, I just want to remember the other Sacco and Vanzetti Award winners who are also political prisoners. Leonard Peltier, of course, 92. Tariq Mehana in 2003. And Mumia Abu Jamal in 2008, I think it was. I can't read from here, but and then most recently, Last year's winners, who are the Holy Land Foundation, 5 of the 5, 3 of them are still in prison serving very long sentences for basically wanting welfare for Palestinian kids and getting caught in the war on terror in the post 9/11 time, still serving long sentences. Max Blumenthal, I just happen to have 2 of his books in front of me. He will be with us on December 14th. It's a Thursday, and that's in person. The first one is called Goliath, Life and Loathing in Greater Israel, and the other one is called The 51-Day War, which is about the 2014 bombing assault on Gaza. Max Blumenthal, don't want to miss him. He has assiduously investigated the truth behind the lies. So join us for that. I want to do a little reading that I love to read every chance I get. Eduardo Galeano writes little vignettes. There's a whole history of the Americas in 1 or 2 paragraph vignettes. And so we go to December 6th, right? November, oh, wrong month. 27th. Are we 26 or 27? Thank you. This one is called Laura and Paul for November 26th. When Karl Marx read The Right to be Lazy, he concluded, if that's Marxism, then I'm no Marxist. The author, Paul Lafarge, seemed less a communist than an anarchist who harbored a suspicious streak of tropical lunacy. Neither was Marx pleased at the prospect of having this not very light-complexioned Cuban for a son-in-law. Quote, an all too intimate deportment is unbecoming, unquote, he wrote to him when Paul began making dangerous advances on his daughter, Laura. And he added solemnly, quote, should you plead in defense of your Creole temperament, it becomes my duty to interpose my sound sense between your temperament and my daughter. End of quote. Reason failed. Laura Marx and Paul Lafarge shared their lives for more than 40 years. And on this night in the year 1911, when life was no longer life, in their bed at home and in each other's arms, they set off on the final voyage. Paul Lafargue and Laura Marx, daughter of Karl Marx. This is called The Musical Message. And I started with this song called My Heart is Filled with Love. It just so happens that a certain David Broeg walked in the room, and I wish he had walked in 5 minutes before, because I would have had David sing this song. He's a wonderful singer. He hasn't been with us in about 10 years. Okay. We'll do it at the end, and we have the lyrics on the printed word. You have the right prescription glasses? Don't need them? Okay, amazing. Anyway, welcome, David Broeg and Sister Claire. It's just so good to have you with us. So, 3 years ago, no, it was 4. 2019, October, we had for Indigenous Peoples Day a certain songwriter named Tom Pacheco. Tom is half Lakota, half Portuguese, born and raised in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And this was my first introduction to Tom's music. And it was just, I'm in full immersion 4 years later, learning his songs and listening to his songs. He's not doing too well. He's in a nursing home now. But, here's 2 of his songs that I want to share with you. The first one is for an Indigenous people from the Middle East, and that is the name of the song, The Palestine People. And And here it is. Have you ever been homeless? Have you ever been lost? When you know where your home is, but you can't get across. Do you dream of the orange groves where your grandfathers lived? Have you suffered such sorrow that it's hard to forgive? Cry, cry, cry as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to the sorrow, shut your eyes to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have a homeland one day. Like ashes they're scattered in the winds of the earth, with all dignity shattered, with all feelings of worth, living life like gypsies, on the road, on the run, with the heels of your history close so far as the sun. Try, cry, cry as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to their sorrow, shut your ears to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have a homeland someday. A people of culture, of genius and heart, mathematics and science, and grace, grace in the arts, caught between the wall and the sea and the bombing assaults, with each settlement growing till there's no land at all. Cry, cry, cry as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to their sorrow, shut your ears to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have a homeland one day. May the Palestine people have their homeland someday. One day, one day. And this next one is one of several that Tom wrote on Native American topics. There's one that I don't think I could learn it. It's not quite, but it's called Grandma's Blue Blanket. And it's about this blanket that his grandma had, that he inherited, and that he had had all during his childhood when he was with his grandma. And he found out after she died that this was like a handed down blanket that was made out of the uniforms of soldiers from Custer's Last Stand. You can look up the song. It's called Grandma's Blue Blanket by Tom Pacheco. This one I've loved since I heard. What's his name? Oh, come on! Brain fart! Richie Havens sing this song, and I love this song. It's written by Tom Pacheco and Roland Moussa, and it's called Indian Prayer. As long as the wind shall blow, as long as the grass shall grow, as long as the streams shall flow, as long as the sun shall glow. This land shall be the Indian. Hey, unday, unday, hey, unday, unday, as long as the birds shall sing, as long as the black bear dreams, as long as the mountains ring with life, every brand new spring, this land shall be the Indian. Hey, unday, unday, hey, unday, unday, as long as the last star shines, as long as the end of time, as long as the sunflower tries to touch and embrace the sky, this land shall be the Indian. Oh, as long as the wildest rain falls down on the driest plain and fills every river vein and rolls to the sea again, this land shall be the land I love. Oh, the land I love. Oh, as long as the buffalo appear in a dream of snow like gods, moving stately slow and go to where the rainbows go, this land shall be the Indian. Hey, unday, unday, oh, hey, unday, unday, hey, unday, unday, hey, unday, unday. I love those songs. Joan.
It is a beautiful song. I'd like to point out there's inherent irony or satire in there, because as part of every one of the broken treaties, they say, as long as this all that, this land will be yours.
The broken treaties.
So this
Yes,
is
absolutely.
the trail of broken treaties. So that land will be every single broken treaty. Don't worry, it's always going to be yours.
Thank you, Joan.
Had that in mind.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful song.
So
Nobody called themselves an Indian.
we have two more Sundays. The first one is the Peace Abbey Sacco and Vanzetti Award. And it's very special music, a group called Music with Heart, led by Tim McHale. And their entire tour is homeless shelters and hospitals and prisons. And they're going to be with us celebrating the Peace Abbey. They always play at every Peace Abbey event, and that's going to be really fun to sing with them. That's next Sunday, yes. The Sunday after that, we have 1 p.m. is next Sunday. Normally we're 11, but next Sunday is at 1. The Sunday after that is, if I'm not mistaken, Richard Wolf. And I'm just getting so thrilled about the amazing lineup of speakers that we're coming up with, either virtually or through the Zoom. As Amar mentioned, Ray McGovern, who we had virtually and put up the last night, and there were already a gazillion views. And same thing with with Richard Wolf and Chris Hedges, and I'm sure Max Blumenthal will be also a huge virtual attendance, and hopefully we'll have this room jam-packed with people. We had it jam-packed a week ago. We did an open mic celebration of the Cantab Lounge and Jeff Bartley, and the place was jammed. And I was thinking maybe we should just have open mic on Friday night church. If that's what people want to come to, Sunday morning. It's but the thing to always remember and be inspired by was that in the 40s and the 50s, Community Church of Boston met in Symphony Hall, and there were 2,500 people there to hear the likes of Krishnamurti, or John Haynes Holmes, who was one of the founders, or Martin Luther King, or Thurgood Marshall. So every time we have just a few people, we remember that the fewer the better, the more we get to be with each one of each other, and that's a beautiful thing. This size would almost be called a minyan, right? By the Jewish people. Yeah, is it enough? Minyan. Love that word. Everyone. Yes, everyone. Maybe for not as long as some of them want to. I've designated Community Church before as the place where the members are very enchanted with the sound of their own voice, which I would say about myself in a way to shut up and go on to the next segment, which is our distinguished speaker this morning. His name is Robert Peters, and he comes from the Mashpee people of the Wampanoag, and I'm going to start with the one that's not written here. He's a poet. He's an artist, he's a writer and keeper of oral tradition, and a firekeeper as well. Robert Peters, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Anytime we get to tell our own story, we take back a measure of power that we've given up. And for Indigenous people, the story of Thanksgiving, or the principles behind giving thanks, is a very indigenous concept to everyone, no matter where you're from, no matter where you're indigenous to. Taking a day where you close all of the businesses and everybody goes home to their families and prepares a great feast and watches football and plays games and has lively conversation. It's something that we should never stop doing. But with Indigenous people, the story that they tell about Thanksgiving is inaccurate and is harmful, and it diverts from the act of trying to make right some of the things that were done that were wrong, or make good on some of the promises that were made and never kept. And being Wampanoag, is our supreme sachem who welcomed the pilgrims and gave them a place to live, taught them how to live on this land. After they, during their first winter, lost almost half of their people because they couldn't take care of themselves on this land. And there were probably numerous feasts that they had together in those early days. But the goodwill was not long lived, and after a number of years, it became apparent that they were going to keep on coming and that they intended to take all of our territory. And even before they came, they used blankets to cause a pandemic in 1617, before the Pilgrims arrived. There were blankets given to people on the coast. And there was a pandemic that killed anywhere between 100,000 and 500,000 of our people. And it was a 15-mile wide path of death that went from southern Maine all the way down to what is now Plymouth and inland, to Lakeville, Middleborough area before it was contained. And we lost about a third of our people during that time. And it is after this that Massasoit welcomed the newcomers to our land. And they didn't just take our land, they took our languages. They banned our culture and formed praying towns for where we would be allowed to live. And this proceeded as they moved across the country, the boarding schools and the wars that we fought against this. So Indigenous people in America, Indigenous Americans, are survivors. We're survivors of the genocide that took place. And there are things that we have to overcome even today. In today's society, you know, Indigenous people still suffer from the losses that we incurred, and still suffer losses even today in other areas where we have to overcome things. So this is a story that really isn't told on Thanksgiving. And the reason we need to tell our stories like this is so that it doesn't happen again. So it doesn't happen to other people, so it doesn't continue to happen to us. And there are various different ways that people address this, you know. I mean, because we do go home to our families on Thanksgiving as well, and we give thanks. But we also think about the narrative, and there are different ways that various people in our community, you know, try and square this up. And one of our people, Frank James, 50 years ago was asked to speak at Plymouth. And he wrote a speech, and they read his speech, and they said, "You can't read this speech here," because this speech, you know, told about what our experience was. They didn't want to hear that. So he organized a group of people and read the speech on Coles Hill under the statue of Massasoit. And that became the day of mourning. And we've been doing that for the past 50 years or so. And other people will not have dinner until sundown or do other things to commemorate, you know, our experience and what we have gone through as people. And I organized a medicine fire that we burned from over the Thanksgiving weekend from 2001 to 2010. We burned that fire every year on Thanksgiving for 10 years. and people would come and they would get smudged, and they would make offerings to the fire of tobacco and cedar, sage, say some words. And some people would come and just stay all day, or stay for days, and say, "Oh, I only wanted to come and make an offering and be there for, I just want to spend an hour or so." And 2 days later, they were still there. And I did that, and the people who came did that for the need to address the things that Indigenous people experience in America. And the fire that we burned in 2006, on that year, on Thanksgiving, we had a wind-driven rainstorm. And the rain, we came and lit the fire at first light, and it just started drizzling then. And by 9 a.m., it was pouring down rain, and the wind started to pick up. And we had a lodge we could go in. We built a lodge and had a fire going in there where we could keep warm. But as the day went on and the wind and the rain became stronger, we couldn't control the fire in the lodge and the smoke in the lodge, and our eyes started to burn from the smoke. And we battled and kept that fire going, and the fire would be burning sideways, and it had to be very hot, so you could put on the most soggy, damp log, and the fire was hot enough where it would burst into flames within a minute or so. And it was a punishing fire, punishing rain, punishing wind, and punishing smoke. And when I wrote about it a day later, I wrote that it was a sign of punishing times to come. And I think we're in those punishing times right now. And people are feeling it. And we had the pandemic that showed up. We had the rise of attitudes that were very harmful to us living in harmony in the world. And I think our younger generations are really, really struggling to make sense of things. We're talking about things. We're talking about colonization and being colonized. When I was in my 20s or 30s, people didn't talk about us being colonized or America being a colony. But we're talking about it now. Things are coming out where they're teaching other things in school. And there are people who are against those teachings. They don't want to have their children be taught the accurate historic truths in our schools. So in the morning after that punishing fire, I got up and I was able to sleep for a while. The rain ended around 2 a.m. in the morning. And at first light, the fire was a pile of red coals and unburnt ends of logs that I pulled together and rekindled. I burned sage and smudged the circle and the lodge. The fire in the lodge appeared to be completely out, but I found one ember smaller than a penny. Took a fistful of twigs, blew on it, and rekindled that fire too. I found the smallest log in the stack because the fire was still tiny. But when I tried to split that tiny log, it gave me a hard time. Sometimes the smallest thing gives you the most trouble. That made me think about us. That little log was like us. The white man was done with us a long time ago. But look, we are still here. A day earlier, at first light, the smudge stick wouldn't light. The ends were loose and spread apart like fingers. I found a piece of hemp and used it to pull the loose ends of stage together and tied them into a tight bundle. The smudge stick lit after that, and I realized the smudge stick was like us also. Our fires won't burn unless we come together. This year's fire was a punishing fire. It stayed lit. It was a sign of punishing times. I was driven from the lodge to be shown that we cannot go back to ancient ways, but we must keep them. We must use them, expand upon the knowledge the ancient ones have passed down through generations. Use the knowledge given to you in your dreams. Look for the things the Creator is trying to show you. It's time for us to use the gifts we have, the gift of spirit that you can lose but no one can take away, the gift of insight. We see things most people can't, but too often ignore what we are shown. The gift of unity. We are fragmented, but never stop wanting. After all this time, we still want to be our own people. The gift of hope, the gift of prayer and laughter and compassion are all things that we have, things we must use and share and let go of when it is time to pass our gifts on to the next generation. This is why we are here now, why we were here yesterday, and why we will be here tomorrow. With the gifts the Creator has given us, we are forever. Now, in speaking about the plights of other Indigenous people around the world and what's happening in the world today, it brings to mind that one of our tribal members was on the tribal float in Macy's parade and held up the Palestinian flag, which caused a bit of controversy. And in front of Macy's in New York.
Where was the controversy?
The controversy was that people didn't want to get involved. And when we speak about the Jewish Holocaust in Europe in World War II, and I say the Jewish Holocaust and not the Holocaust because genocide has taken place a lot of times among a lot of people. But one of the most memorable quotes from that is the silence was deafening. And for the last month or more, we have watched and witnessed on TV the bombings of civilian targets, the bombings of buildings where there are people and families inside, and over 10,000 people have died as a result of these bombings, women and children. And the news is kind of avoiding it, but they can't completely avoid it, and our politicians are avoiding it. They don't like it, but they're saying that Israel has the right to do this, but they don't. That this is considered a war crime. And when Vladimir Putin was doing it in Ukraine, we called it a war crime. And now we're sanctioning this as United States is, giving aid and taking a position that this can be done. And we need to use our voices to let them know that it is not okay to bomb innocent people. However they want to fight this war, they can't target innocent people. And it is something that, is one of America's gifts, is that we can speak out about things. And we need to speak out loudly enough so when the ceasefire is over, they can't resume bombing places where there are civilians. And I don't have any answers on what they should do, but I do know that this is something that shouldn't be done. And I want to close with a prayer. I call Walking with the Creator. Sometimes I smile outwardly and laugh in fits of glee when I know the Creator is smiling at me. I am thankful for my existence and try to live out my purpose for existing. I am thankful for all of the lives that I have and will someday intersect with. I thank the Creator for the lives that came before I existed. I live my life in their footsteps and help prepare the world for the ones who will walk in my shoes after I exist. I want to do what I can to make sure that our future world is a happy world. I want and ask the Creator of all things to make our world a peaceful world, where the highest virtues of existing are expressed. Our intellect, our interaction with the environment, our responsibility to maintain the balance of things, our ability to love, laugh, and cry are all things that make the Creator take notice. Thoughts like this came to me when I walked with the Creator through the woods down by the Mashpee River on hundreds and hundreds of thought-filled strolls. I walked with the Creator at 12 acres. We walked in the ceremonial circle at 55 acres. We walked together in the great swamp where so many of our dreams were cut short. But some of those distant memories still lingered and followed me through the dream world in a haze of blue light. The Creator was with me in the ceremonial circle at Assonet. We walked together at Hassanemeset, where it rained all day. I walked with him on the day after that near the great oak tree next to the Council Rock. And I knew Palmetto Comet stood on that rock long before I did. I imagined him vividly standing on Council Rock, looking out over hundreds and hundreds of Wampanoag warriors, Narragansett warriors, Nipmuc warriors, Pequot, Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Shinnecock warriors, Abenaki, Mohegan, Mohawk, Mi'kmaq, Montauk, Cree, Natick, and Niantic warriors. The ancestors all came together to defend our dreams. And look at us now. We are still here. I meditated in the Creator's presence countless times and still do. I argued with him, asked endless questions. I saw things, was shown things, and learned things. I was given answers, and sometimes I couldn't understand the meaning of the answer I was given. But I hold those missed messages in my mind and still believe that one day we will wake up from this dream and see our way home. Oh. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Robert, for gracing our humble place here. I want to read something that we put together last week. Several people contributed to writing this kind of official statement, if official is a word worth using, just a statement of what we feel about the present situation. And it reads like this: the Community Church of Boston is heartbroken by the ongoing genocide in Gaza being executed by Israel with the use of U.S. weapons and U.S. political and financial support. We recognize that this conflict is a manifestation of the occupation and apartheid against the Palestinian people. We call on our political leaders to use their leverage to enact an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with humanitarian relief for the Palestinian people of Gaza living amongst carnage and in rubble. We call for a just resolution for the Palestinian people, without which there can be no peace in the Holy Land. The Community Church of Boston is a free community united for the study and practice of universal religion, where all are welcome. The Community Church of Boston has been a peace and justice congregation since 1920 that was founded in protest to World War I and in protest of the persecution and unjust execution of Sacco and Vanzetti. We are committed to peace and justice for all, including Palestinians and Israelis. In this spirit, we will continue to support local and international rallies, direct actions, civil disobedience, and more. We will also continue hosting programs about Palestine and Israel in our efforts to educate ourselves and others. And thank you to all of those who helped write this statement, especially to Amar, who sort of compiled it and put it together for us. Yeah. On a sleepy, endless ocean, when the world lay in a dream, there was rhythm in the splash and roll, but not a soul to sing. But the moon shone on the breakers, and the morning warmed the waves, till a single cell did jump and yell for joy, as though to say, this is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Then the day shone bright and round her, till the one turned into two, and the two into 10,000 things, and the old things into new. And on some virgin beachhead some lonesome critter crawled, and he looked about and he shouted out in his most astonished drawl, this is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Then all the sky was buzzing and the ground was carpet green, and the wary children of the wood went dancing in between. And the people sang rejoicing when the fields were glad with grain, this song of celebration from their cities on the plain. This is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. But there's smoke across the harbor, and there's factories on the shore, and the world is ill with greed and ill and enterprise of war. But I will lay my burden in the cradle of your grace, and the smiling beaches of your love, and the sea of your embrace. This is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. The song is written by Dave Carter. And we have some time to bring Robert back up and engage in some conversation, either for the people who are here with us or out in virtual land. Let me start by asking you, Robert, what can white European privileged people do to be more in solidarity with Native peoples?
Well, I spoke about different ways Indigenous people like to try to, or need to try to square up Thanksgiving. And one response to this was to call it truth giving. And I think the first step is to be able to tell the truth about the things that happen to us and the things that are happening around the world. And to be able to accept these truths. And I think that's a good place to start, being able to accept the truth that you might not want to hear, that you might not like. And I think once we get past that, we could start to see what happens when we address some of those things. And we address some of the things that have happened and are happening to us and other people around the world.
Well, let's get that cordless mic out and see if there's any other questions or commentaries. Also, Amar, is there anybody on our Zoom or YouTube who wants to chime in?
Miles has his hand raised on Zoom.
Hello, Miles.
I can't see it.
Sorry. I'm trying to unmute. There we are. Okay, Danatada, Tansi, hello and greetings from Treaty 7 territory. I'm in Alberta, Canada, and we're going through a journey of truth and reconciliation here with the Indigenous people. And since 2015, when I read the summary report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here, I've learned so much wisdom from my Indigenous neighbors. I'm not Indigenous, but I'm very much appreciating the need to honor the treaties in their true spirit and intent. So just to share a couple of things and then to ask a question. First of all, that from Russell Means, I believe it was, he taught me that apparently the word Indian is actually derived not from India, the nation, because it never actually existed when Christopher Columbus traveled. But Christopher Columbus was Italian, and Ingenta Indio in Italian means a people of God or a people of the Creator. So I just remind everyone here to think of that. The Creator is very much held in high esteem by the Indigenous people. Another thing that I learned was that, and I'm not defending the Crown here, that has much work to do here in Canada, but indeed, Indigenous people here hold the Crown very high in regard, and now the King, because the treaties are directly with the King. And my question is, I believe it was Oren Lyons taught me, and it was an Indigenous person, that we have to remember that what happened in 1776 in the United States was backlash against the Treaty of Niagara, which the King at the time was trying to prevent the random takeover of Indigenous lands. And apparently, to some people, this is more of the reason why the colonies revolted against the King, was they didn't want to be restricted from advancing over into Indian land over the Appalachian Mountains. What do you believe, sir?
Well, I've read that and heard that in various times throughout my life. I have not studied that, but yeah, I am aware that one of the motivating factors of our revolution here was to continue that grabbing of Indian territories here in America, and that went right across the country, and they went into every indigenous nation, on this continent, and stripped them of their lands, their territories. They started the boarding schools. As far as the Crown in Canada, Canada's record of boarding schools where they tried to take our culture away happened there as well. So it's something that probably would have happened anyway, whether it was under British rule or colonial rule. I imagine, but I know that that Canada's record on Indigenous relations is similar to the United States record. I can't say which is worse or which is better. They're both genocide. So.
Microphone?
following up on the question already asked, I'm always interested that in Canada, they don't talk of Indigenous people, I always say Native, but First Nations, and that they have a truth and reconciliation process going, and I've heard of no such thing in this country, and I'd like to know why that is. I know there have been a lot of attempts to repeat the Trail of Broken Treaties and go to the Department of Interior. I know the UN has passed, declarations on the rights of Indigenous people. The problem with the United States is it's just not very good at honoring any treaties, whether domestically or internationally. But is there someone who could, in the absence of people like Blind Deloria, put together a truth and reconciliation? Do you have any ideas? Maybe you. I mean, you were invaded first, right?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons there's such a division in politics in this country is you have probably in equal amounts people who want to address things and people who refuse to address these things. And they don't want you to teach the truth. In Florida, they have all these laws they're passing about what you can teach because these are truths they don't want to hear. It boils down to voting rights, where they want to, prevent people from voting because the demographics here are changing. And I think one of the fears among the right is that they're losing this grip that they gained on the country. And they want to keep things the same. And then you have all of these people on the other side that want to see things change. I think that change is going to come. I think that, younger people and people who are becoming citizens, and the biggest wave of people coming in now and becoming citizens are indigenous people that are coming from Central America. One of the things I like to say is that the indigenous tribes on the border should make some sort of arrangements where they could gain lands to welcome indigenous people coming into this country and treat the people who are coming in like human beings. Thank you. But it's resistance. They're resistant to change.
Go ahead.
No, I just had a question.
Okay, I would like to thank you very much for sharing your story and your truth with us and being here. And I was I've been attending the Indigenous Day of Mourning for the last 2 decades, mostly on the last 10. And gratefully, this year was very special, and it really speaks to the wave that you just referred to of the new generation turning the tide, and this feeling of the inevitable, that the truth is what we are going to have to face at some level, regardless of our willingness or even our interest. And I want to share that in specific relation to that, Leonard Peltier, who we all know has been wrongly imprisoned, he, this year, there is a prosecutor who actually helped put him behind bars that has now formally written to Biden to release him, having taken full responsibility for his own part in wrongfully jailing him. And I feel like these messages are reoccurring in so many ways. And I'm so grateful to be alive at this time, though I realize might not be my lifetime, that I see the full reparation and the truth that I know we can live in our heart of harmony. And what a gift it is to be able to be witness and to do my part to plant, and the courage to take in your story and to just, even for a minute, imagine living through hundreds of years of this and still coming strong and being so willing to open your heart is such a statement of inspiration of its own. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just a comment and then a question. In my family, I have 3 daughters. One of them observes the day of mourning, so she doesn't come to Thanksgiving dinner. But I heard you speak about if you have the day of mourning, that then you would have, the Indigenous people would have a feast of thanks at the end of the day, in the evening. And I'm wondering if that would be possible to make that sort of nationwide, so that people who say, but we've always had our Thanksgiving dinner at 1 or 2 or something, because most people don't go to work on Thanksgiving Day. They places are closed. They, medical people have to go to work, but there are several other occupations that don't go to work. If that would be possible for saying that Thanksgiving begins in the evening, not in the daytime. So instead of Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving night, or Thanksgiving evening, so that the celebrations would start in the evening and allow for the day of mourning. So that's just a thought, a suggestion. And my question is, well, people who are coming from Peru or Guatemala or wherever were indigenous people there, but when people come to another place, they become settlers. Do people who were indigenous, everybody here was indigenous someplace, however long ago, however far away from someplace. But I don't consider myself indigenous here. My parents were born here, so maybe they would speak of themselves in that way, but none of my 4 grandparents, none of them were born in the United States. They all came at different times. So I'm really wondering about, I think of indigenous people in the United States as members of the different tribes, and that I would call people indigenous people, not Indians. I don't call them people that, I call them indigenous people, First Nation. But when people come from where else they were indigenous, how are they then thought of? How would they be classified? You said, yes, some of the tribal groups on the borders, if they welcomed them, which would be a good thing, and would they then absorb them into the tribal structures in this country, or would they become like people who didn't come from a tribal culture? What would they be? In other words, that's a real question about nomenclature and why people talk about people in the way they do.
That's a good question. And in some ways, we already do that. But in other ways, indigenous people from Mexico and from Central America can easily outnumber the indigenous people that are here. So in order to maintain the local cultures, you have to have that too. Also, like in Boston, locally there are really 3 nations that shared this area: Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and Nipmuc people shared this area over thousands of years. And the governments that we had were so abruptly disrupted over such a short period of time with the pandemic and with the arrival of settlers and with the laws, they're imposing their laws and their colonization upon us. It leaves a lot of business for us people to attend to now here, pertaining to the people who are indigenous to right here. And then you could say indigenous Americans. Indigenous Americans would include, the Taínos from Puerto Rico and the territories, your Hawaiians, your Inuits. So those are indigenous to what is America. And then there are indigenous people from the Americas that come here. And we recognize all of that. But you have to also recognize when to what are the affairs of the people who are indigenous to right here, like with indigenous Americans, that distinction would be because as Americans they would have certain rights that somebody who's indigenous to Mexico or Guatemala wouldn't have. There are about 9 different definitions for being indigenous. And it makes it very hard. You have federally recognized, state recognized, recognized individuals. You have tribes with blood quantum, admissions, and then you have the children of the people who married out, that don't have enough blood. You still have to recognize their indigenous blood too, even though they can't be a member of the tribe that their parents was a member of. And I say that's a crazy idea, but there are tribes that still do this. So it's very complicated. And it causes problems, and I think everywhere there are problems that come about because one group might not have the recognition that another group has, and it's not our fault. It's that's the way. And it's difficult. So we have to take into account a lot of things.
Do you want me?
Thank you.
Zoom?
You're welcome.
Okay. And Fran too? Yeah. Sure. Dave and Ruth. Dave, you're next.
Okay. Yes. Robert, is Fox Street still with us? And if so, how do we contact him?
I don't know Fox Street.
Your father did.
He knew a lot of folks.
So yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of him, but I don't know personally.
Okay. Well, thanks. He may not be around anymore.
You're welcome.
Let's look him up and find out.
Okay.
There's also Fran Rosnowski. Hi, Fran. Welcome.
Let me unmute. So Robert, thank you so very, very much. My name is Fran. I'm from Chelsea, and I'm wondering if there's a way for you to share a copy of your very inspirational poem to the creator with us.
Actually, I'm gonna leave the I'm gonna leave the calendar that came from is the 2020 calendar here with the church.
Okay.
So it'll be here.
Thank you. And we can
Good.
put it on the YouTube notes and on our website. Somehow we can do that for you, Fran.
Thank you to both of you.
Um, yes, did I see Charlie or Susan first? Charlie.
Just in the same spirit as the last question, could you recommend news sources or other ways so we can keep up with current events related to First Nations?
Man, I'm so bad at keeping up with current events and the Facebook and there's so many different groups. I can't get. I pass them over. You know what I mean? I don't get involved with so it would just. I could spend an hour a day, just erasing emails that are junk mails. So I'm the wrong person to ask. I don't really subscribe to a whole lot.
There's one that I like, and it's so hard to keep up with. Community churches, about 15 different causes all happening at the same time and being bombarded with. But there's one that's called Native News, that it's sort of a consolidator of news items that I like very much. You can find that online. Let me take this over to.
Yeah.
Indian Country Today is another one.
They used to have a few magazines. We had one. We have a tribal letter that goes out to the members called Mita. And I remember years ago they had Akasakni Notes, from Akasakni, New York, and they had the newspapers come out every once in a while. But with social media, there's just so much that I honestly don't keep up with all that's happening.
Nam-myo ho-renge-kyo, ho-renge-kyo, Nam-myo ho-renge-kyo. I also join with everyone else to so deeply appreciate your presence and your sharing today. I know our elder monk really wanted to come, couldn't, but wanted us to pass on his greetings to you, his very best. Yeah, Kata Shonin. I just had a quick question. Someone we know who used to live in New York City had come to know Evan Pritchard, who you may not know him. He's, I think, originally Micmac, but lives in New York City, and he makes a lot of maps of Indian country here and there. He researches, which tribe was here and all that. And so Evan Pritchard, he gives tours of Manhattan to the Indigenous eyes. So anyway, our friend got to know him and learn a lot. He had told her that the Penobscot man who guided Henry David Thoreau in the 1800s through Penobscot land in Maine, so-called Maine, he eventually took Thoreau to the top of Mount Katahdin. They walked up Holy Mountain, and I'm sorry, I don't know the Penobscot man's name. I never read that book yet, but anyway, that the guide, the Penobscot teacher, felt that Thoreau was at a place he could accept teachings more, and that there was something, this is what Evan Pritchard found, something like the teaching of the great heron, which is common to Algonquin speaking peoples and nations on peace, teachings of peace to be held and practiced very deeply. I just wondered if, so we're hearing this kind of in a roundabout way, I just wondered if you happen to have heard that story.
I've heard of it. I couldn't recite it to you or anything like that. But our stories are important, and the legends that we have. And it's important to keep them and pass them on. But I couldn't give you the details of the Great Herring.
Robert, thank you for being here today and for all the teachings that I've been learning with you this morning, especially about the way that you treat the planet and the Creator in a way that it feels as a friendship more than someone that you should obey and observe. Thank you for observing the day of the morning, because I didn't know how to phrase it when I was talking to my friends, immigrants. I came from Brazil 20 years ago, and we don't have Thanksgiving there because we didn't name the Indigenous genocide in Brazil after a nice celebration with the family.
Yes.
That is less coward, I think, anyways. But it's been 4 years that I've been going to Plymouth, and there is no way that I can go back to sit down and have Thanksgiving in a way that I used to when I moved to the United States. As an immigrant, I was taught the acculturization of learning how to become person from the United States, that's what you do in the third Thursday of November. And all the Turkey genocide as well, as we can say like that,
Yes.
right? Amazing how the whole country can eat one bird on the same day and think that's fine. But anyways, I want to say that the new generation, like Krishna, was very important, James, about teaching me also how to understand the tribes in Massachusetts. And when she said that around the country and here, we're still facing murder of women, Indigenous women, and they are not searching the landfills, and that if we're talking about suicide, the highest numbers are still among the Indigenous people. So if you don't mind to talk about searching the landfills, because that was new to me this year that I was learning with them, and about this also, the suicidal rates that are still comparable with a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And I was very sad to hear that. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's suicide and addiction are very prevalent in our communities, and that includes my tribe. You know, we have I was working with some people with addiction, the Bureau of Substance Abuse and Services, and UMass School of Indigenous Studies, and we put out a couple of booklets on prevention of addiction between Indigenous youths, and I was taken on as an artist for the booklet, and the first booklet, you know, the Indigenous people that were involved with it, the community people, said that they wanted it to reflect our culture and our regalia. And I drew pictures of individuals in our community all engaged in a stomp dance. So we are using, we began sending stomp dancers to powwows, and would have a stomp dancer lead a stomp dance, you know, to support families and individuals who are impacted by addiction. And it was always very well attended. And it was anybody who was suffering, you didn't have to be indigenous, could get into the stomp dance. And the stomp dance is a line dance where everybody, dances in one after the other. And we do call outs and things like that. And I think it helps to recognize and to bring that out. It helps to let people know, hey, we're it matters. And we want you to be healthy. We want you to be strong. We want you to be free from addiction. And I created a design that we would stomp into the ground and have a whole day and night and day where we would have stomp dancers continuously stomping until that design is stomped into the grass. And I'm trying to put that together for next year. And the design is rather interesting. I don't have it with me, but across the top it goes like this, and those are our heads. And then it comes down and in, and that's our voice. And then it goes up and down and up and down, and those are our legs. And then it goes into a spiral into the middle, and that's our mind, our heart, and spirit. And when it comes out of the spiral, it comes up and down, and those are our arms embracing. And it means all of us.
Dave Lewitt, you had your hand up. Join us again. Unmute.
This is wonderful to be with you all.
That's Ruth.
Yes.
Hello, Ruth.
Hi. There's two things I just wanted to briefly share that have been important to me. One is the Indigenous Environmental Network that has been around for a long time and influencing, I would say, the whole environmental movement. And the other is the book Braiding Sweetgrass. And I was just trying to remember Robin's last name, but
Wall Kimmerer, if I'm not
thank you
mistaken.
very much. Yes, that's who it is. And in terms of speaking as an Indigenous person from the heart, and as a scientist and as a mother raising children in this culture, it just has, it's written so beautifully, and it has so many insights that I just wanted to mention that. And thank you for this program. It's just been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Jose.
Yes, thank you, Robert. I will definitely take a picture of that beautiful prayer. And thank you for leaving us a copy here at CCB. I have two things. One, sharing with you that I'm from El Salvador. According to Ancestry.com, I am 52% Native American. You refer to Native American from where, right?
Yeah.
And so in El Salvador, in 1932, less than 100 years ago, there was a genocide. It's estimated that 1% of the population was massacred in less than 2 months. It took longer, but the main killing happened in less than 2 months. Yeah. Ordered by a general who then lasted in power for about 20 years, illegally, and terrorized the people. But he targeted, and not just he, but the wealthy, the oligarchs, the coffee growers, the owners of the land, targeted specifically indigenous people. And then when you get the map of Central America, you will see a rainbow of diversity in languages, in culture, in ethnic, in ethnicity, but not in El Salvador. Not in El Salvador. And the reason is not only that the genocide happened, but also people who are indigenous were not only discouraged, they were forced upon survival. They took their indigenous clothes off, they forgot the language or declare amnesia. And as a result, many Salvadorans who are here in the Boston area,
Yes.
who are immigrants in this country, can tell you much about their ancestry, their relatives, their grandparents. So when you were saying that genocide and Holocaust happened across the world, I want you to also name that in 1932, in El Salvador, you know,
Yes.
4 countries away from the U.S., an ethnocide, a genocide happened, targeting indigenous people specifically.
I remember when I was in my teens, they had the revolution there, and you had Daniel Ortega, is one of the freedom fighters.
That was, yes, Sandino, Nicaragua. And then the other point, my question is, how do you feel or what do you think about these entities, institutions that are now testing your genes to trace your ancestry? How do you see that? Is it a contribution to discover whom we are and what do we need to honor? What do you think about that?
I think it's definitely going to change things because it kind of awakens the people that don't have any awareness or much awareness of where they came from or how much ancestry they have, regardless of where it's from. And it brings up the question of the people who live the culture opposed to the people who have forgotten it and being brought back into it. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works with indigenous tribes. It's usually based on censuses. Or around here it's based on censuses. And, you know, out in Oklahoma you have the Dawes Roll. And the ancestry can identify people who aren't included in these things. And it's going to change things. I don't know how it will change things. There will be people who discover things in their ancestry and will go to explore that part of their ancestry and try and become involved with it. And it'd be interesting to see how the people who've held on to the culture embrace the people who had no idea or had no previous knowledge of those things. And I think, you know, in many cases, the people will be indoctrinated into those type of things. In some cases, they might not be. It's hard to say, but colonization and the way we were colonized leaves a lot of difficult things in the undoing and decolonizing of people. And everybody, you know, when you go through ancestry, everybody has like this vast ancestors, and you know, most people identify with 1 or 2 lines into this, and you know, this group of ancestors, and we have a lot more. You know, there's a lot of, I'm mixed with a lot of different races as well. So it'll be interesting. It's an interesting thing, yeah. that you can find out that people can have this graph saying, oh, you're 10% this and 3% that. And that's something that's, just like the internet and AI, you don't know how these things are going to pan out.
Yes. Robert, I don't know if this thing's working. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, I want to address the issue of who is the rightful owner of the land. Because when I think about, like, specifically the Black Hills and how, I guess the Supreme Court has recognized that, a treaty was broken, and I think they have like 1.2 billion in a bank account, but they don't take the money because that would be acknowledging that, it was all right to take the Black Hills away from them. But then when I read about how the Lakota took that land away from a lot of other tribes, I guess the Pawnee, the Kiowa, Cheyenne, maybe. I don't know exactly, have all the details, and then going all the way back to the 1500s where the Arikara were there, and it just seems to me that to say that the Lakota are the rightful owners of the land would really say that the people that they stole the land from, those other indigenous tribes that got driven out, that they don't count. And it just seems like, when I look throughout history, it just seems like whoever has a superior weapon gets to claim the land. That's sort of the way it's been all the way back, and all over the world. And so as far as the rightful owner, I've in an idealistic way, getting back to your respect for the Creator, I believe anybody that can do something creative for the good of all should have the right to the resources, whether it be land or anything else, because, in an attitude of love, that's really the rightful owner is the creator of the creativity, and the creativity is working for the good of all.
Well, we didn't really have a concept of ownership the way it's expressed here in our society today. We didn't have deeds for land, and we looked at ourselves as caretakers of the land. And as these things pan out, I don't think that the tribes can really, it's not as easy. You can't easily say this is this one's territory or that one's territory, and that's why we say that these lands, here are shared lands, that the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and Nipmuc people shared over thousands of years. But to say, oh, this part's this one, and this part's this one, and this part's that one, that's a very difficult thing. But at the same token, we don't really own it very much. Whatever. So that's, as that unfolds, then there'll be some disputes about who's rightful to this area, who's rightful to that area.
Prime hunting grounds.
Yes, and we try to respect that too. We try to respect what one's territory would be and what another's territory would be, but it's not always that easy.
I'm talking about the tribes that didn't respect it and drove off the other tribes out of the prime hunting grounds.
Well, I mean, there were disputes between tribes right here, and at different times, the territories could change hands too, and there's also a question of how closely related certain peoples are. And it's complicated. It's very complicated how things, pan out. But the thing is, right now, we don't have that land. It would be, a positive thing if the Lakota could get that land back, and then they, what kind of recognition would they give to the other tribes that they may have displaced is another story.
Well,
I just don't know if the tribal forces that wanted the territory for hunting, for example, did any treaties with the other tribes and then broke them. It's about making treaties and break them. That's really breaking the first law of the land.
Well, I think in our cases here, we all came from the South. And we're related to the Lenape, and we've been here 10,000 years, we followed the glaciers. And when the glacier receded, and then we went west up to, so the Ojibwe are related to us here. So we did move around. And, over centuries. And so it's difficult to say, like what somebody's territory would have been 1,000 years ago, or 500 years ago, or 300 years ago.
well, let's close out here with final. Oh, one more. I'm sorry.
Actually, I really kind of wanted to be last. I want to thank you so much, Robert. You are a man of great wisdom and the courage to be a leader, and I really appreciate that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
But I wanted to share one thing. During the standoff at Standing Rock, I experienced Woody Guthrie. And I wanted to share that he wrote what has sometimes been called the People's National Anthem. This land is your land. And during the standoff at Standing Rock, he came to me and said, please, I want the words to that changed. And so I would like to tell you the words that Woody Guthrie, I think, would want to be heard today. This land's not our land, this land is their land. Let's follow their guidance and ancient wisdom. Let's leave behind us our exploitation. This land depends on you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me an endless skyway. I saw below me a golden valley, Turtle Island, our responsibility.
Thank you.
Well, let's close out with a couple things. First, this is Winona LaDuke right here. She joined us, 2 years ago? It's a beautiful piece of art by Anna Brones, who does these cutouts. Power is not brute force and money. Power is in your spirit. Power is in your soul. It is what your ancestors, your old people gave you. Power is in the earth. It is your relationship to the earth. Thank you, Winona LaDuke. Then I want to walk over here and tell you that we have this book in our library. Upstairs there's a magnificent library of photography books donated to us or willed to us by Robert Datilio. And this one is
photographer and author Matika Wilbur. And it's a beautiful, huge coffee table sized book of all photography. One page for each tribe that she visited, and there's hundreds of tribes throughout this country, and I could go on and on, but I would invite you to come and be with us at Community Church and enjoy some of the resources we have here. Then I want to take you over here to this plaque, which it so happens was made by a certain person that was mentioned. He wasn't mentioned, but his travesty was mentioned, which is called Mount Rushmore. This is the work of Gutzon Borglum, who also did Mount Rushmore, and this is a tribute to Sakwan Vanzetti. And finally, here's the list of Sakwan Vanzetti Award winners, and I will take you right up to 1992, Leonard Peltier. And let's end on a wish and action for Leonard Peltier, in hopes that what Robert mentioned about the prosecutor of that case having a change of heart might give a change of heart to those who rule this land. Free Leonard Peltier, say aye. And on that note, we repair to Luis Guzman's beautiful luncheon. I invite all of you joining us on Zoom and YouTube today to come down and be with us in person to enjoy a different talk and a different music every Sunday, as well as luncheon. Thank you, Luis Guzman, and thank you to all of us who joined this morning. I forgot one speaker before we take a holiday at the end of December, and that is Linda Dittmar. That's the next one, I think December 10th. It's the next one after Sakwan Vanzetti to Peace Abbey. Linda Dittmar was born and spent her first few years in Israel, just at the time of the creation. She's maybe in her early 80s, and has recently written a memoir about her pilgrimage from the early state of Israel after the Nakba to where she is now, which is retired in this area, Linda Dittmar, and that's on December 10th, if I'm not mistaken. Then December 17th, Richard Wolff. Join us for the virtual appearance of Richard Wolff. But join us physically if you like, just to enjoy the lunch and the company. Thank you to Amar Ahmad for doing the Zoom for us this morning, and to all of you. And on that note, let's just end with a walk through some Central America activism posters until it's time. I'm on my way to lunch here, you notice. That's what I'm most interested in. But